All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning. To officially welcome back Kelly Krauskopf as President of Basketball Business Operations for the Indiana Fever.
Imagine if the very person destined to catapult the WNBA into global stardom is actually being sabotaged by the league's inner circle. This sounds like a fever dream of a conspiracy theorist, but recent violent displays on the hardwood suggest a darker reality. Between the toxic rhetoric off the court and a chillingly calculated move from those in power, millions are now convinced of foul play. A quiet crusade is supposedly being fought against Caitlin Clark. Yet the truth of this saga is far more convoluted. The situation is grimmer than anyone dared to guess, exposing a professional organization that seems to be sabotaging its own growth. Her selection as the #1 overall pick by the Indiana Fever was celebrated as a monumental shift in sports history. This marked a total transformation for women's hoops, as she arrived as something much greater than a typical first-year player. She was an unstoppable cultural phenomenon, a burning star who had completely rebuilt the record books and collegiate viewership single-handedly. Her matches pulled in audiences that eclipsed even the Stanley Cup Finals and top-tier Major League Baseball postseason games. As the ultimate prize, she was the one who finally forced the league to swap commercial travel for luxury private charters. This was a luxury veterans had craved for decades, while she simultaneously turned empty arenas into sold-out spectacles within minutes. Resale market prices for her games reached insane heights, proving that her massive influence was both immediate and undeniable. The environment was perfectly primed for a legendary crowning, a hero's welcome meant to elevate the entire professional landscape. However, she was met with a savage and relentless trial by fire instead, as the proverbial red carpet was ripped away. In its place stood a punishing ordeal, making it clear from her very first tip-off that no easy transition would be allowed. The level of aggression reached a whole new peak, with defenders who were significantly more powerful, agile, and physically imposing. They did more than just guard her. They delivered a stinging message with every collision, shove, and punishing pick. It went far beyond standard professional competition, feeling like a deeply personal vendetta to anyone watching the broadcast. This was a focused, bruising assault that appeared carefully orchestrated not just to stop her play, but to break her spirit. The intent was to make her doubt her belonging in the pros, and that silent warning was about to get loud. It manifested in the most blatant and undeniable fashion imaginable, triggering a massive controversy that pulled back the curtain on the league. This single moment revealed the bitter and resentful side of the sport, showing that the physical hits were just the beginning. The exact second the sporting world realized something was deeply wrong finally arrived during a high-stakes matchup. This did not happen during a standard play for position or a routine box-out in the paint. It was a cruel blindside shoulder hit from Chennedy Carter, a disgusting move that had no business being on a basketball court. Carter did not just foul the young star. She committed a physical assault, delivering a cowardly cheap shot away from the play. The impact sent her crashing hard onto the floor, and the footage instantly exploded online, causing a global wave of fury. This was no welcome to the pros moment. It was a targeted hit meant to cause injury with purely hateful intent. Carter's arrogant silence after the game, paired with the visible celebration from teammate Angel Reese, was truly horrifying to witness. That display acted like fuel on a blazing fire, turning one ugly foul into a symbol of the league's internal rot. It laid bare the deep-seated envy and bitterness that many suspected had been brewing in the shadows for a long time. The initial weak response from the front office was a basic foul, only changed to a flagrant penalty after the public erupted. This signaled everything fans needed to understand. The administration had no intention of protecting their biggest attraction. She was essentially left out in the cold as a league-wide campaign seemed to form against her very presence. It looked like a unified front of older players who believed she had not yet suffered enough to earn her status. But while everyone argued over the foul and the league's lack of spine, an even more disturbing story began to surface. The betrayal seemed to originate from the one place she should have been safe, her own squad's locker room. A troubling trend emerged as the weeks passed, one that analysts, former pros, and online detectives simply could not ignore. Time after time, the woman who is arguably the best long-range shooter on earth would be left wide open on the wing. She would stand with her hands raised, pleading for the ball, only to be completely shut out by her own teammates. The game film provided undeniable proof, showing players forcing bad shots into traffic while she stood completely alone. This total lack of chemistry hinted that the animosity was not just coming from rivals, but from inside her own circle. Her battle was a two-front war, involving both the physical beatdown on the court and the mental toll of being isolated. Video evidence repeatedly highlighted her being open and demanding the rock, only to be met with total silence from her peers. Passes were jammed into crowded areas rather than being kicked out to her for what would have been an easy 3 points. The Fever's internal synergy wasn't just slightly off, it appeared shattered, as if someone had deliberately thrown a wrench into the works. Observers frequently caught the players throwing tense glares at their coaches and displaying visible irritation on the hardwood. Murmured, cold gatherings defined their presence, sparking a firestorm of internet rumors that suggested something far more sinister was occurring. A dark narrative emerged. Her peers were icing her out, cutting her off to deflate her stats and force her into submission. Could professional envy be fueling this, sparked by her massive spotlight and that multi-million-dollar contract with Nike? That partnership included a custom sneaker line, cementing the reality that a mere newcomer now served as the face of the organization. With the club's future resting on a 22-year-old, the vague remarks following the final buzzer only added fuel to the fire. Seasoned leader Aliyah Boston failed to silence the chatter, offering only sharp, brief responses when the media demanded clarification. She dodged questions using hollow PR jargon, masking a profound level of discontent that she was forbidden from sharing openly. The focus quickly moved from a freshman finding her footing to the terrifying prospect of a full-scale locker room rebellion. Was it possible that this once-in-a-lifetime athlete faced betrayal from the very people wearing the same jersey as her? Such inner friction brewed a volatile atmosphere, turning the roster's foundation into a breeding ground for suspicion and disorder. The established elites of the basketball world were gearing up to deliver a crushing blow through more formal channels. The impact was brutal, proving that the bitterness had bled out from the court and into the broader public sphere. Esteemed legends and longtime commentators began fanning the flames of resentment through various media outlets. Retired icons and active rivals alike quietly worked to diminish her impact, making the harsh hostility toward her seem routine. Diana Taurasi provided the most notable instance, forewarning that a harsh reality check was about to hit Caitlin Clark. Looking back, those words seem less like a fair assessment and more like an ominous warning or a direct ultimatum. Various athletes and experts excused the constant aggression, heartlessly labeling it as a typical rite of passage for all newcomers. These critics overlooked the obvious truth. No first-year pro across any sport has ever been under such an intense microscope. Never before has a debutante started their career with such a massive bullseye or shouldered this amount of expectation. As the schedule rolled on, the discourse surrounding her became increasingly complicated and charged with tension. The debate delved into the delicate racial politics of a white star emerging as the icon for a mostly black organization. Critics argued that the press's obsession with her as a messiah figure was erasing the historic achievements of those before her. This narrative ignored the black pioneers who spent decades working in the shadows to establish the league's very existence. A volatile mix of career envy, social friction, and anger swept through the basketball community as a result. A clash of philosophies emerged, with the veterans feeling as though their lifelong efforts were being treated as irrelevant. This rising star signaled a massive transformation in both the social influence and the economic potential of the game. In their eyes, she didn't represent a beneficial surge that would improve the situation for everyone involved. Instead, they viewed her as a destructive force of publicity poised to demolish their hard-earned progress. This quiet tension was soon codified into an explicit stance by the highest levels of the sport's leadership. This tension peaked with a ruling from the top brass that left countless supporters feeling shocked and abandoned. The ultimate proof that the system was rigged against Caitlin Clark didn't originate from within the locker room. Rather, the blow came from the very group responsible for selecting the nation's representatives for global competition. In a decision that ignored every logical, economic, and performance-based metric, Caitlin Clark was excluded from the lineup. Her exclusion from the American Olympic squad for the Paris Games sent shockwaves throughout the international sports world. The move made no sense, considering she was arguably the most famous and highly viewed hooper in the world. This was an athlete who had demonstrated an incredible ability to generate massive, championship-level viewership for her league. Despite her impact, she was deemed insufficient to even occupy a backup spot on the national team. The reasons the selectors offered were weak and obvious, coming across as a slap in the face to the fan base. They pointed to her limited history with the national program and some vague need for roster harmony as justification. This excuse fell flat, as others who were selected had even less tenure or were producing far worse numbers. Any rational observer understood the truth. This was a blatant display of power by the sport's gatekeepers. It served as a clear declaration from the elites in high offices, sending a loud signal that she didn't belong in their club. They were essentially saying that her popularity, her massive following, and her financial impact meant absolutely nothing to them. The inner circle locked its gates, executing a move that can only be described as professional suicide. It was a maneuver dripping with petty personal agendas and desperate power plays. This felt like a formal act of aggression against the very evolution of the game. As the public erupted and reporters circled like vultures, the Indiana Fever's front office became the focal point. Their crown jewel, the phenom responsible for their newfound fame, had been dragged through the mud on the world stage. How they acted would finally unmask who they were truly protecting behind closed doors. With their protagonist caught in a massive international scandal, everyone waited to see if the organization would come out swinging. Everyone from the bleachers to the boardroom anticipated a fierce, uncompromising shield for their superstar. They looked for a stinging rebuke of the Olympic snub and a loud, proud defense of their rookie. Instead, the air was filled with a hollow, tactical, and utterly devastating void of sound. Management, led by Lynn Dunn, retreated into safe, bloodless corporate jargon about sticking to the schedule. They mumbled about long-term goals and the bright path ahead for their young talent. The spark was gone. There was zero indignation, zero heart, and absolutely no backbone shown. In that eerie moment of doing nothing, the true betrayal hinted at in the headline finally surfaced. This wasn't about a single play or a roster spot. It was the Fever's cold choice to abandon their star. They preferred to bow to the league's ruthless elite, rather than making waves or causing a scene. They chose the status quo over the very woman who was single-handedly bankrolling their entire operation. It was a gut-wrenching turn, signaling to Clark that she was nothing more than a line on a ledger. She was a product to be sold and managed, not a person to be defended or valued. Management was happy to cash the checks and watch the merchandise fly off the shelves in record numbers. Yet, when she needed them to face the hostile establishment, they folded like a deck of cards. This icy, calculated business move proved the team would willingly throw her to the wolves for their own comfort. They valued their standing within the league's rigid, unforgiving hierarchy more than their own players' peace of mind. That strategic quiet, paired with the Olympic exclusion, pulled back the curtain on the cold reality of pro sports. The entire messy situation comes down to a collision between two massive, opposing powers in the sport. It's the unstoppable force of massive profits versus the immovable object of an aging basketball culture. Clark represents the bottom line, despite her meager salary of $76,000, a sum she generates in mere minutes. She is the primary engine driving tens of millions in fresh revenue into the entire basketball landscape. Venues that once struggled to fill a few rows are now packing 20,000 fans into the rafters. All of this happens simply because she is the one standing on the court. Broadcast rights are expected to jump from $60 million to over $240 million solely because of her. This economic boom is credited entirely to her massive drawing power. By any economic measure, she is the most significant financial asset women's sports has ever witnessed. However, she's clashing with an old guard of veterans in suits who feel their authority is being bypassed. They are stuck in the past, deeply suspicious of the sweeping transformations she has triggered. To them, her rapid ascent feels like a slap in the face and a threat to their tradition. The organization thirsts for the money and the fame she provides, but they hate the change she brings. They seem totally incapable of embracing the cultural earthquake that follows her every move on the court. The gatekeepers, from the Olympic board to the front offices, seem to be babysitting bruised egos. They are coddling a few bitter veterans while risking the long-term growth of the entire professional league. It's a move that defies all logic, painting a picture of a league currently eating itself alive. Meanwhile, the game's biggest icon is left stranded right in the middle of the line of fire. Surrounded by rivals on the hardwood and cold shoulders in her own locker room, she's in a tough spot. With the head office working against its own prosperity, what becomes of the Caitlin Clark era in this league? We are watching one of the most explosive and high-stakes dramas to ever unfold in the world of sports. She stands as both the ultimate messiah for the league and its most controversial lightning rod. This rare basketball phenom finds herself targeted by a systematic wave of on-court brutality from her rivals. Within her own team, quiet walls rise up while upper-level bureaucracy moves against her in the shadows. Forces appear obsessed with tearing her down, leaving the organization teetering at a definitive, dangerous breaking point. One route offers massive expansion, worldwide fame, and a literal mountain of fresh wealth. This singular icon bears the entire weight of the sport's future upon her own frame alone. Alternatively, the the league might succumb to arrogance, stagnant customs, and a culture of defensive exclusion. Choosing this course threatens to drive away countless viewers and throw away a truly historic chance. Officials might drop the ball on their biggest blessing, raising a truly haunting mystery about their intent. Could the powers that be so fixated on vanity that they would destroy their own most valuable asset? Is this sheer spite, or does this grueling savage ordeal serve as a hidden, cold-blooded master plan? The goal might be hardening her into a powerhouse, so tough and dominant that no critic can touch her. Solving this puzzle will not just shape her legacy, but dictate whether the entire league survives and thrives.